what I'm here to talk about today is what is part of my heartbeat. I moved to the mission field when I was 3 years of age, when things were a little tougher than what they are today. Okay? Today, to the city we go to, normally if we have a direct flight, we get there in 5 hours on a jet. If we have connections, we can get there in 8 hours. Recently, because my visa expired and I still maintain an active role there, we actually had to make, during my sickness, kind of a hidden run. We went down and came back in 24 hours, just to be able to qualify and to meet the government regulations. So things have gotten much easier. And to be honest with you, I will share some of those with you today, because I thank God that He has given us many opportunities in our generation that He had not given the previous generation. Okay? And I'll share some of those with you. And one of them is simply the fact that this morning I've kind of haven't spoken in public for a long time, so my voice has uncalloused, okay? So if I didn't have the mic, I would be totally hoarse by the end of this speech, by this time. Okay, so we have sound, okay? We have just so many wonderful things that God has given us, and that certainly, as we will see, have made the ease of getting the gospel out much expedited, much better, okay? But we must understand all the blessings God has given us. We must understand also the obstacles that we have. Today, we want to start our reading in the Word of God, and we'll look to the Scriptures, and we want to do our reading, and we'll have some others as we go. But in the book of Romans, chapter 10, in the book of Romans, chapter 10, in the book of Romans, chapter 10, it says, verses 12 through 15, "For there is no difference between Jew and the Greek," the Jew and the Greek. Okay, so basically, as Paul's writing, he's making the comparison of the two biggest people groups, but he's basically saying there's no difference between the ethnic groups that are out there and their languages. "For the same Lord, our same God, over all, is rich unto all that call on Him." So God will respond to anyone of any nation, of any tribe, of any tongue, who will call upon Him. And He has a slight advantage over us, porque você não compreende nada que eu estou falando agora. Se eu pedisse alguma coisa, você não saberia o que é. So you said, "What in the world were you saying?" See, it's good because God understood what I was saying, right? I just said, hey, if I asked you something, you wouldn't be able to help me because you don't have a fancy idea of what I'm saying. And so the truth of it is that God, regardless of the nations of the world, the 3,000 plus languages and dialects there are, God knows them all. And He hears all of those who call to Him within those dialects. That's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Okay, but then he goes on to say, "For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved." Isn't that fantastic? That if we call on the name of the Lord, we can be transformed. We can come to have a relationship with God, because Jesus Christ is the only connection between God the Father. He is the only way. But here's the good thing, is that anyone, in any nation, in any dialect, in any language that calls upon the name of the Lord, they get reunited with God for all eternity. That's pretty phenomenal. That's a pretty good gift. But then it goes on to say, "But how shall they call on Him whom they have not believed?" Okay, and then he goes on to say, "And how shall they believe on Him whom they have not even heard about?" Have not heard. I mean, it's like Have you met Paul? Well, who in the world is Paul? I've never heard of Paul before. Who's Paul? Okay? So you see the issue he's talking about here. He says, if you call on the Lord, he'll hear you. But to call on the Lord, you have to know about him. Well, how are you going to know about him if somebody didn't introduce you to him? Okay? So then he goes on to say, and how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach except they be sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings, good tidings of good things. So, in verse 17, so then faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So here's my question. We're going to focus on a lot of different things this morning, but hopefully keep it kind of focused to where we can put it together. How can you call on the Lord if you've never heard of him? Okay, I moved to Brazil when I was 3.5 because it was Brazilian law and we lived in Brazil. We had to go to Brazilian public schools, so we did. My reading books, as I learned about all of the gods of the many indigenous peoples in our country. The thing that stood out about most of the gods that I heard about was they were always so wrathful. They were so mean. I never heard a story of redemption amongst all of the tales of the gods that we read about. What impresses me about God more than anything else, you understand that now, is his merciful grace and his love that he has directed toward us, to all the nations of the world. And so, it is a great privilege to know this God. But to know him, you have to first hear about him. Okay? So, let's do like this. How many have ever met President Trump? He's a very known guy. How many have ever shook his hand? Okay, none of us, right? So to say, I have met him personally, you can't say that. But how many have heard about President Trump? I mean, it's trumped on the TV and the radio every day, right? So you know about him because somebody has talked about him, because today we have actually the privilege of having images of him. Even if he walked in, you would know who he was. Because you've seen pictures, you've seen videos. If you probably heard him talking in the foyer, you would probably say, hey, that sounds like, right? Okay, I'm just using an example of what it means to know somebody. But if you have never heard of them, go back some back village. Well, President Trump, who's he? Is he the tribe leader for the next tribe over? Who's he? You know? So the issue is that you have to first know about it. It could be by word of mouth, but you have to know about them before you can even know them, okay? Much less call upon them. So it is very important that the word get out. And we're going to talk about different aspects of the word getting out this morning. Okay, so the gospel saves. It saves whoever calls upon it. It's salvation to all nations and all kindreds and all tongues. It has to be heard. They have to know about Jesus before they can call on him. They cannot believe on whom they never heard about. Okay, so therefore, there has to be a messenger. There has to be somebody that gets out there and tells them about it. Okay, and the word here, preacher, is actually messenger. It's a little broader than just me standing up here preaching to you. Okay, and how can they have messengers if they're not sent? Okay, so we want to explore all those different dimensions. So what we see here firsthand, that the gospel that we believe is efficient. It works. It's powerful. It's transformed your life. It's transformed my life. It's given me a new direction, a new hope. It has given me a new way to look at life, but an eternal hope. It is sufficient. It is everything we need, but you've got to know about it. You have to know about it. If you do not know about it, you cannot receive it. One of the senior missionaries in Brazil, the state that I served in most of my life, I actually served in most of northern Brazil, but the single state that was our base is actually bigger than the state of Texas. It's called the Amazon. Okay, so every time I look at one of these Amazon trucks, I think, hey, that's the place I grew up, right? It's miles and miles and miles and miles. You can fly for 3-4 hours in a plane, in a jet, and see nothing but forest. So a lot of the things they feed us are kind of lies. But anyway, as in that area, it was humongous. And the next state to it is almost the size of Texas. So there's two immense, and it's where the Amazon River runs. Okay? The Amazon River runs through the entire state of the Amazon. It runs through part of the state next over, which is Pará. But they're humongous. 2 missionaries in the early 1900s went there. And they met. Okay? One was a recent saved guy. He didn't really know much about it except that Jesus saved, and he wanted people to know about it. And he decided to go to Brazil. He's kind of he was Norwegian. He got saved in the U.S. West, so he was kind of a tough dude. He went down there on his own and just kind of survived. There was another missionary that went, whose name was Brandon, and they met. They both had great ministries over the years, but they met early on. And they said, here's how we'll do this. This is big territory. I'll take the eastern side, and you take the western side. And so that's what they did. Now, the western side, as you can imagine, is the side of Texas, right? But anyway, this one missionary, he actually decides that God wants him to go all the way to the end of Texas. So he crosses that entire mass. Okay, when I was a kid, it took a steamboat somewhere about 45 days to get there from the city we're in. And we're halfway across the Texas, right? We're right in the center of the Amazon. It took you 45 days by steam vessel to get there. If you didn't get stuck, if the sandbars didn't change, if the river hadn't dropped. And so he went, and he goes up there. He's the only person there who knows Jesus. So how do you have church? How do you have service? No, he didn't. So what did he do? He would go out on the street corner of this little town. It was a small town. And he would sing songs by himself with a little lantern. And then he would talk about Jesus. Well, the locals thought, that white gringo must be of the devil. I mean, he's preaching stuff we've never heard. He has to be of the devil. So 2 young men, one who has an interesting story of his own, but his name was Santiago. And the other one was Newton. And so they decided, you know what, we're going to go out there. That guy, we just need to get him out of here. We know where he goes out and what street corner he stands on every night and sings and reads the Bible and talks to people. We didn't know anything about the Bible. That talks to people about this demon stuff. We're going to run him out of town. So they got set up with their clubs and got ready to beat him up. And they hid in the bushes. They knew exactly what he was going to do. And sure enough, time runs around. He comes down to the street corner. He opens his little hymnal and he starts singing a cappella, the loud of his voice. Then he starts, and they're there waiting just for the moment. They were going to come out and they were going to bash it. But as for the first time, that they'd actually listened to what he said, and as he said it, even though his Portuguese was quite broken, actually, the one looked to the other one and he said, that's not of the devil. And they lost their guts to run him off. So there they stayed. The next night, they were compelled not to go run him off. They were compelled because they wanted to hear more about this guy. And from this guy who was speaking about this Jesus that seemed to be a God of mercy. So they did. And the next night, Santiago, understanding the message, I don't know how well he understood the message, but he understood it enough to know that's what I want, that's what I need. He was a cursed convert on the western end of Brazil, the first baptized. He happened to be the pastor who baptized me too when I was young. So we have a good story together. But all that to say that you have to hear the gospel. And sometimes it's tough to get there. Sometimes it's hard to get there. Okay? But I'm honest with you. Sometimes we as Christians say, we've been supporting that stuff for 10 years and don't get no results. We've been giving all of our life. What's come out of this? You hear all kinds of things as you run around the U.S., and it's not only here, it's in Brazil, it's wherever you go. And so people start giving up. I'm glad, however, that the people who invested in cancer research and have donated and researched, and it went wrong, and it went wrong, and it went wrong, but they didn't lose their hope. They found the solution for people dying of leukemia. You see, we give up too easy. We have more than just something that's going to extend my life maybe another 10, 15 years. We have a message that gives life eternal. It's a relationship with God that fixes the broken world that we live in, and it will fix it forever. So the gospel has to be heard. Okay, now let's look at the second thing that I would like to look at today. And it's a verse of Scripture that's actually in Revelation, which I've already mentioned. He said, and they sang a new song saying, thou art worthy to take the book and open the seals thereof. This is in the heavenly realm. Thou wast slain, this is Jesus. Thou hast redeemed us for God by thy blood out of every kindred, tongue, people, and nation. Isn't that wonderful? That anybody anywhere in the world could be, and I say could be, because they have to hear. Okay. If they do not hear about him, then that's not a could for them. That's not a possibility for them. So God moves on his people, on us. And he gives us a mission. He gives us the ultimatum for us to go, for us to take the message. When I think of salvation going to the nations, when we first moved to Brazil, in our first 6 months there, Dad had just learned the language a little bit. We moved to an interior town that was really way out. And my mom was pregnant. She had a premature childbirth, which my brother died. And she became seriously ill with infection. There were no doctors. There were witch doctors. Actually, the little town is known for its witch doctors. That's what we were famous for, that particular town. And so my father went out looking to everyone that was in the village, everybody that was there. Does anybody, at that time it was penicillin or it was sulfa, does anybody have penicillin or does anybody have sulfa? And there was none to be found. But our Amazon truck, which was a steamboat, only came up to our village once every 40 days. Once every 40 days. So that meant in order to get the penicillin or the sulfa, you had to wait for his next trip. And then you say, hey, put an order in, and could you bring back the next time the penicillin or the sulfa, whatever you can find. And then it's going to take another 40 days to get back. So what are the chances of surviving if you're really sick for 80 days, if you've got a bad infection that's killing you? But anyway, I recall the joy when they heard the sound whoop of the riverboat. It was coming in. And as soon as it docked, my dad was there. And he said, I need to talk to the captain. So he went up to the captain. He said, sir, he said, here's the case. Actually, they already knew each other because we had traveled on this ship, on this boat. He said, Alta's badly sick. Do you have any penicillin? Do you have any sulfa? He said, you know what? I probably have some penicillin. I think I've got some here. So he searched through his things, and he found some tablets, some pills of penicillin. Many of you met my mother. That's to say she survived because she got the medication. Now here's the case. There was a solution for her problem, but it only became effective for her whenever she got the medicine. And even though there was knowledge that there was a medicine, there was no way to get it until someone came that had it available. So that should challenge our hearts. The world needs us, and God has made it that way. So we need to look at it from that. As often when I think about missions, we need to be aware. We need to send missionaries. That's one of the things we're going to have to do. We have to send them, and then we kind of have to support them. Did you know? People say, I don't know why missionaries have to be supported. Well, here's the main reason. If I were a bivocational pastor in America, I go out and get a job with Uber or with Amazon or whatever and work half of the week or daytimes, and then I minister in the weeks and the evenings. I know a lot of pastors that do that. Okay. But for you to get a visa approved to get into Brazil, you have to have a guaranteed income by some organization that will underwrite you. Otherwise, you will not get a visa to get in. It's a turn down. So one of the reasons that we have to, by the way, most of the countries of the universe, of our world, are that way. They don't let you come in and say, what are you going to do here? Nothing? A freeloader? No. I understand. However, there are nations, especially in the critical areas, the 1040 area, that will not let you in as a missionary. So even if you had the support, they won't let you in. So then you have to have another degree in something else. Okay, in nursing, and farming, and agriculture, and something that interests them for you to get approved. And then you go in, but you still have to have support for yourself. They'll let you come in, but you still have to support yourself. So it makes it a kind of a double whammy. First of all, you got to know God and you have to be versed in the Scriptures. And then second, you have to have a second profession that's sellable, that will fly in their country. So the complicators sometimes are very great. But the difficulty that we have, and missionaries have a lot, I don't talk about the bad time usually, but when we go to another country, missionaries have a lot of things that they have to, number one, they have to have support. Number two, they have to be, I'd say, tough as nails. But they have to be gentle. Tough as their survival, gentle with people. And then they have to learn a language, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more coming up now. good friends of ours. Actually, he was saved in one of my dad's churches here in America before he went to Brazil. He became a missionary eventually. They went to the country of Peru. They had been there for probably about 6 weeks. They just got moved in, got their house, got their things, gotten unpacked. They didn't speak the language. The next step was to learn the language. So they were working on that. But they just didn't have the language, you know. Hello, hi, goodbye. Their daughter became very, very sick. She was 6. She was about the age that I was at the time. She was very ill. And this is a backwoods town. But they did have a doctor and a little clinic. Not a hospital, but a clinic. And when they took her in, they took her back. And the parents are waiting out front. The girl's in excruciating pain. Things get quiet. After some time, the doctor comes out and says, blah, 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 blah. Oh, wonderful. Great. Thank you. Thank you. You know what they thought? They thought he was telling her that the surgery had gone well and that their daughter was going to be okay. You know what he was really telling them? She died on the table. She's gone. It was only 4 or 5 hours later when, under the duress, one of the other missionaries who did speak the language heard about it, came out to try to help them in some way. He said, let me talk to the doctor. And he came out bearing the bad news. The doctor said, we tried to tell them, but they didn't seem to understand. But their baby died. Do you understand the difficulty you have about transmitting the gospel to another language, to another people? We don't think about that. It takes approximately 900 hours for you to become fairly fluent in a language. 900 hours of study. Figure that out. That's a long time. During that time, you have to survive. And that's, if you figure that out, studying 8 hours a day, that's still a long time. You've got to survive. And then you're probably not totally proficient in it. So Paul didn't do that. Apostle Paul didn't. Yeah, Paul was by lineage Jewish. He spoke Hebrew and Aramaic. He was Roman because they were under there, so he spoke Latin. He was educated in the Greek culture and language. He was a citizen of the Roman Empire. So he could move. He moved from city to city, from state to state, from country to country with no reservations. Why? Because he was a Roman. He had citizenship. He was a born Roman. And so he could move around, but he also knew their language. When he went to Athens, they spoke Greek. And he spoke to them in Greek. When he came back to Jerusalem and they were all upset, he waved his hands, and when he spoke in Hebrew, he's not a foreigner. He's one of us. So the language is a big barrier. And here's one of the things I want to share with you so that we do not give up on our investment. The message is good and it's powerful. We're not looking for an answer to how to get the salvation. But we are looking for the way, the avenue to get it there. The avenue to get it there. There are almost over 3,500 languages and dialects in our world. Some of them are very complicated. Some of them take not 900 hours. They take years to be able to be fluent in. And yet, here's the issue. Did you know that there are hundreds of languages that the Scriptures have not been translated in, not even John 3:16? You say, how could that be in our era, in our computer? How could that possibly be? Well, fortunately, because of our modern advancements, and we had a lot of contact with new tribes. Actually, my granddaughter is here, and her mom's parents were New Tribes Mission back up in the tribes. So, technology has been pretty phenomenal. I remember when the computer came in, our missionary translators, they were so excited about it. It made life so much easier for them. Even with the old ones, I remember talking to them. But here's the issue with the missionaries who go in to translate a language. Most of them have to have a PhD in linguistics to be able to pull the job off. It's a lot of investment to pull your PhD off for linguistics. I know my brother did. And then you have to be versed in the Scriptures. So you have to go to some type of Bible school or theological school. That's before you ever hit the ground. And then when you arrive at a new nation where you don't know their language and there's no one there to translate for you, you have to start from scratch. They have a whole method. It's pretty phenomenal. We won't even go to that because it would take me like a couple hours to explain it all. But anyway, that's the way it works. For them to, in our world today, there are 400 languages that have not even been scripted. That means they don't even have writing. They're only oral. Out of those 400 languages, I researched to find out how many of them at least have a connection with another language, that they speak maybe two languages. And it's what we call our trade language. It's what you do business in. It's like we see in the old movies, the Indian has his whatever, he's trying to trade off his bear skins or whatever. Sell. I'll give you, sell. Well, I'll give you this or that. Sell. You see, he doesn't understand anything except just sell, and he's supposed to get something back if he gives this. So a lot of the trade languages are the same way. They're very limited. So how do you explain to a guy that knows the word sell and knows that you pass it buck that way and they give you something this way that you want, whether it be sugar or flour or whatever it is? How do you explain the gospel to that guy with those language, with those words? My own experience in the evangelical field, God blessed us to be able to introduce the sign language of the deaf in our area. It's very similar to the American Sign Language, but Brazilian Sign Language is different. They have a total vocabulary of 600 words. We use translators, but I studied sign language just to have an idea. And here's what our teacher said. He said, if you're trying to translate a sermon and you don't have any idea how you can say that, just say, Jesus saves, Jesus saves. And I'd look over a lot of times to our translators and we're talking about the scripture and I'd say, Jesus saves, Jesus saves, Jesus saves, Jesus saves. 10 minutes of Jesus saves because they didn't have the words to pass and to transmit what I was trying to say. So then you simplify your sermons down, know the most simple, and you think, how in the world am I going to say it with the words that they know? So communication is a big thing. So just for the long range, and I'm going to stop because it's time to stop, to be able to coin, to actually get a script, an oral language into a scripted language. First of all, it requires about 6 months to a year to just understand the basic words they're saying. It takes about 5 years to become fluent enough. This is a translator who knows, this is a linguist who knows what he's doing. It takes him about another 3 to 5 years to become fluent enough to understand the nuances of the words so he's not using the wrong word for the wrong thing. So it's very time consuming. And that's before they can ever even start translating the Bible. That's just ground zero. Now, we're in the process of translating the Scriptures into the language that has been now written down for a difference. Okay. And when that happens, it takes somewhere between 10 and 15 years to translate the New Testament. That's the short part. Now, it's time to conclude, and I'm going to... When AI came in, when the computers came in, they were really excited. They didn't have to re-script it and rewrite it. They could copy and paste and adjust, etc. When AI came in, it has been phenomenal. Not if you don't like it. Never uses that kind of stuff because we are too broke to use it ourselves. Yeah. You know, I remember in my first pastorate, they had a bunch of books in the pastors that I inherited. It said, the cesspool of Hollywood. And I read through it, man, it was horrible. That was back in the, that's way back, you know. But then I looked at a research and history on it. It said that whenever the TV came out, it was offered to Christian people first. To which they responded, we don't need that junk. Well, guess what? The devil took the junk. And we complain about the world we have. A lot of it is a result of what the media has fed us. And then the internet came along. We did the same thing again. We don't seem to learn. But anyway, with AI, the translators are excited. It speeds the process up so much of referencing things. They can cut the time down in almost half. Isn't that phenomenal? A 15-year translation of the New Testament, they can cut it down in approximately to 7 years. Isn't that wonderful? I think it's phenomenal. Well, let me just say this. The time is running out. God is coming back. He's going to give those people that are out there shaking the bushes, He's going to give them the tools so that what He said is going to happen is going to happen. It was a great throng of people that sang to the Lamb. By His grace, we were redeemed. And then from every people group, from every nation, from every tribe, from every ethnic group. Isn't that fantastic? God's going to make it happen. Now, here's the key. People say, if I had have realized when Bill Gates put his in there, put my first $100 investment, meant I would be a rich man today. And you would be. What was the problem? How come you're not floating in money? Because you didn't. Right? You didn't. And there are so many other things that have come along. Musk, if you'd gotten in on the ground floor on that one, you'd be rolling in a little cash. But we didn't. So there's a greater reward. And God said, in heaven, there are going to be these great numbers of people. We can be a part of it. Sometimes it's slow. Another one crashed. The stupid jerk, is he never going to be able to pull it off? You heard that? Another one blew up, the media said. This guy's a joke. Poor guys who invested their money. But they got rich because eventually it did work, right? The people who invested in cancer and it didn't work and it didn't work and it didn't work. But they kept on researching, kept on investing. I'm alive today because of that investment. And it's just physical life. It's not spiritual life. Okay, so here's what I want to kind of leave with us today. William Carey, one of the very early missionaries to India. He spent 40 years in India. He died in India. William Carey went. He had to learn the language. He preached for 7 years. And he did not have a convert. It took him 7 years before he had his first convert. And he was diligent about it. So, we must never give up. We must continue. And here's my final encouragement to all of us, and I remind myself of that all the time. God has told us that we need to go. That is His plan. Therefore, don't give up. Keep sending. Keep going. Keep praying. Keep supporting. Hang in there. Just hang in there. Because let us not be weary with our well-doing. For in due season we shall reap if you faint not. So as every opportunity, as we have therefore opportunity, let us do good to all men, especially to the household of faith. So this is my encouragement to you today. I'm not down on what God's doing. I think He's doing a great job. Satan has a lot of opposition. I didn't tell you about all the opposition stuff. But guess what? God's going to win. Get on the right team. Get on the right team. Invest with the right team. You said, but that missionary's been down there and I don't see any results for years. Hey, depending on where he's at, sometimes it takes a while. Don't give up. Just hang in there. Just hang in there. Continue to hang in there. Because God will bless what He said He's going to bless. His word does not go out in void. So, but we need to get it translated to these people, right? So we've still got about 400 languages that need to be translated. So pray for that specifically. We don't support any of those translators, but if you have the opportunity, you can. But pray for all of your missionaries. It's this big operation. It involves a lot of people. It involves a lot of preparation. And so, God has blessed it. God bless you too. Don't give up. Keep praying. Keep giving. Keep believing. Keep hoping. God will win the victory. And guess what? One day, when we're all in heaven together, there's going to be people from all these different ethnic groups. And if we stood there together today and tried to sing with them, and said, oh, huh? We'd be confused. We wouldn't even probably lose our own if so many voices going around. But in heaven we will have a new tongue, a new language. And the languages will no longer be separated. And no longer will we see as each other as different. We will all be God's children. We'll all be God's creation. We'll all be God's close relationship. And we'll talk the same language. We won't have these issues. These issues came because of sin. But it's because of grace that we're getting over them. May God bless you. Have a wonderful, blessing day. And may God help you to be persistent, consistent, and intensive, and very directional in your giving and investment. I understand you have to invest it for this world, but you got to invest for the next one too. It really pays off.